And we are live. Judy, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Doing wonderfully well. So, we have had the pleasure of speaking to each other or with each other on multiple panels now. We did the entrepreneurship panel, I think, at KetoCon last year, and then we did the uh, food addiction panel at Hack Your Health this year.
Right.
And we've oftentimes spoke at the same conferences together. So I feel like you and I, like we're just good friends at this point. Like I'm very grateful to know you, very grateful to consider you a friend more so than a colleague. That too, obviously, but more so a friend. I think we have very similar approaches to our, mindset around client work, coaching, entrepreneurship, food addiction panel now as well. So I'm just grateful to have you back on the podcast. I think this is probably episode 3 or 4 that I've had you on my show.
I think maybe three. I'm not sure, but yeah, thank you so much for having me. And I also consider you a friend. And I mean, I sought you out at Hack Your Health just to, have like one-on-one conversations because I know we're both so busy. And so it's such a nice area or a place to just be able to catch up without, any of the social media or videos or photography going on. So I just appreciate it. And I think we were on the entrepreneurial panel 2 years in a row.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. I think so. And I
Pretty
love talking
crazy.
business. So we'll dive into some business on this one. We'll dive into a little bit of everything. We'll talk about things that you don't typically talk about on podcasts. 'Cause I think that's exciting to chat about. But before we dive into that stuff, let's talk about what you do probably talk about to some extent. And obviously that's anything in the carnivore space. But on that note, as far as carnivore is concerned, and from a business standpoint, do you feel like carnivore is in its heyday right now? Do you think it's on the upward trend, the downward trend, staying relatively stagnant? Like, how would you summarize being in that space right now as a content creator, as an entrepreneur, as someone that produces content for that topic?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think that carnivore is having its heyday. I don't know, obviously being a fan of carnivore, I think no, the more people that learn about this diet, it will be more and more popular and it'll be here forever to stay. But I also know that diets come and go. And interestingly, I feel like I sort of missed the carnivore heyday or like this recent increase in popularity. And it's because I've been focused on chronic illness, mind body work, the environmental illness such as mold illness, and but I knew that and I was okay with it because you and I have talked before, but we're in it for the long game. And so as much as I could have totally rode this wave of popularity and thrown out my carnivore graphics and stuff, which I mean it's great that it's becoming so popular, but I mean, from our business perspective, I couldn't go back to that, at least right now, or where we are in our practice. But I do think carnivore is here to stay. I think it will be cyclical because I mean, it would be foolish for me as a business owner to think, no, carnivore is going to be here forever. And it will be the diet that stays forever because we saw Atkins, we saw ketogenic diets, we saw South Beach diets, like, and all of them have come and gone. And there's always a new version. And maybe it's not going to be called carnivore, but it'll be something that has a lot of meat in it. But it is silly for me as a business owner to think that no, this diet's forever here and I'm going to bet the whole farm on it, and that no other diet will ever come, because I that has never been the case for any diet, no matter how powerful a diet it is. And so we are here in for it for the long run, and diet is one portion of our practice, but it's not everything.
Yeah, totally agree. And I feel like, I started putting out content for keto diets around 2016, I think.
Mhm.
And I think if you look at Google Trends, which I don't know how accurate that is, but it should probably be a pretty good proxy. Like keto diet, I think peaked in 2017, 2018. And
Okay.
now you're seeing carnivore in a similar spike fashion. And like keto is not as popular, but I would consider carnivore to be like a subset of keto.
Yeah,
At the end
totally.
of the day, they're both using fat metabolism as the primary fuel substrate. But like, I don't feel like keto has fallen out of favor necessarily. I'm glad that I'm still producing content around keto. So I'm imagining it's probably going to be similar for carnivore. I don't know what the next big thing's going to be, but it's like once you've recognized how much it benefits you personally and the people you work with, you don't feel the need to jump ship to the next hot thing. I don't see that ever happening with you. I don't see that happening with me. It's frustrating to see people coming into the carnivore space now or the keto space, 2, 3 years ago, who
Right.
obviously were there for the wrong reasons. And they're going to be the ones that move to the next big thing. But the next big thing's probably going to be like eating bugs or something like that. So probably not going to do it anyways.
It's funny. I'll get my colleagues or my husband will say, "Hey, have you heard of this carnivore influencer?" And they have a lot of followers, and I've never heard of them. And so I know that there's a lot, and I think it's great because it's getting the word out. But I do agree with you. I think social media, there's a lot of people, and I've even met some at Hack Your Health, to be really honest, of uh, people come to me and they're like, "I have this many followers, and I am doing this," and it's okay. Do you want to, like, bravo? I don't know what to tell you. It's such a weird where people are introducing themselves to me as like, this is how many followers I have, this is my next thing I'm going to share. And it's so like, okay, I'm a person, and I'm actually, I have a practice, and it's I know that people follow trends, and you see it in people's social medias where they're like keto, paleo, carnivore, blah blah blah, insulin resistance. And I think there will always be people like that. And as you and I have said in the past, where you just look at someone's content for a certain amount of years, and yes, we will change, and new data will come out, new research, and we will pivot as needed, but there won't be these major swings in what we're sharing. And if you look at the root of, or the base of what we share, it's still typically the same. Just like, even though you have this new savage system in sharing like your ketogenic bodybuilding, you still talk about the same diet. And now there's maybe periods where you're sharing like, do this phase of eating and do that phase of eating, you talk about bodybuilding, but it's all still part of this big, Robert Sykes, etc., in it. Whereas just like I still am a big fan of carnivore, but I still also talk about mind body, environmental illness, and other things that impact you other than just carnivore. And I think that when people find true purpose and their goals, I think over time you'll see the people that are in it just for the popularity. And I get it. People want to be popular. People want to fit in. And it's unfortunate that sometimes the part I don't like about it is when they're sharing stuff that is not necessarily beneficial or helpful for people, especially because they're not working with people individually, or they don't really have clientele. And so they're just sharing their own N equals one. And for many people, that recommendation can be harmful. And that's the only times that I don't like the whole popularity model. But I think in the general overview, it's beneficial because then more people get to hear about it.
Yeah, it's interesting because I know, knowing enough about you and myself, that like we're not in it for the following count, but at the same time, there's a dichotomy that exists there because as a business person, you want to make sure that you are spending your time and efforts and energy creating something that will be impactful, that will be seen, that will be, helpful. So at the same time, you have to kind of look and see, okay, what is popular, what is trending, where do people's interests lie? Where should I focus my efforts? What questions are out there that need to be answered? And it's frustrating because like there'll be times where I'll be looking to see where people's eyes are, where people are focusing their attention, and I'll see these accounts grow exponentially in a relatively short period of time. And I'll look at the content because it's obviously popular. It's people are wanting to see more of it. But I'll scroll through it and I'm like, I'm not learning anything from this. This is not
Right.
benefiting me. I can't see how this is benefiting others. There's not really any education here. It's just simply entertainment. But especially like with carnivore, like if you really distill carnivore down to its simplest form, it's relatively simple to do, not necessarily easy. But same thing with keto. Like at the end of the day, we could pretty much tell people, hey, look, eat real whole food and minimize the processed junk. Like it could be distilled down to its simplest form. And like you see people that are blowing up in popularity on carnivore, and they're just simply saying, "Hey, eat a steak, eat a steak, eat a steak," and that's seemingly where people's attention is. And you see their accounts grow, but there's not any of the nuance information. There's not any of the depth of research that the content that you're putting out contains. So it can be frustrating. You can almost allow yourself to get bitter if you're like, "Why is this growing in popularity, whereas what I'm doing is not?" And you're just gonna wind up being a miserable person. You start going down that rabbit hole. So you have to just figure out the dichotomy between where's people's interest, where do I find interest, where do I want to focus my efforts, and is it worth my time in the beginning? And I feel like if you do all that with the right intention and with the right degree of focus, you can't really concern yourself too much about the stuff that you have no control over in the first place.
Yeah, it definitely is tough because I joined the carnivore space very early on, and I probably had the biggest Instagram account as a female. And then so many people have passed me since then. And so in moments I'll feel like, oh man, that makes me sad. But I also know that we are more focused on our practice. And I have to, as a business owner now and having a team of almost 10 people, or maybe, I don't know, we had a period of layoffs at a certain point, but it's, we think about, well, what's the long game? Like, what is our mission? What is our core values? And oftentimes, as of lately, it's how do we build a better practice so that what people see on, whether it's YouTube, whether it's my book, that they are also getting that level of excellence when they're in our practice with our team. And so we are sharpening the saw within our practice, but a lot of that is not external facing. So a lot of people don't like, what is Judy working on lately? We have probably the same amount of graphics that we have shared externally, internally to our clients in our Mind Body program, in our Surge program. We have all of these things that we don't get to share as much. But right now, for me personally and our company personally, it's not, we're not focused on social media, and we're taking a little bit of a backseat on that because we want to make sure that our business, our practice is at its best. So if we're building a house, that the house is the most sturdiest, we have the best contractors, the best live-in furniture and all of that, so that then when we hit social media again, that we're ready to bring on the people and the clients and the and be able to support the individuals that come, and that they are, you know, they're almost guaranteed that, hey, we're providing you excellence, you're getting the care that you expected and that you're paying for. And if we're focused so much on getting the numbers on social media and I'm just doing the dance and focusing on that, then the house may end up crumbling. And that is a bigger part of our why than just to be big on social media. And so while there's moments where if I get on social media and I look at numbers, I can be sad, but I know that that is such a superficial number. Although yes, it may get you more eyeballs, which will then support your practice or your business. But it's if you think of it in the long game. I listened to a lot more leadership and business material and books and podcasts now than like the diet space. And there was one interview where it was very thought provoking, but they said at a certain point you're going to have enough money. And it's not about money, it's not about followers. And if you don't love what you do, if you do not believe in your mission, you will feel like, what are you doing? You have enough money, you have enough followers, and you feel so empty, or you're following this algorithm of a dance of social media, and you're just not happy with what you're doing. And every day it's just, well, this video did well, let me do it again, and then hit it on repeat. But where are you in that? And as a content creator, or as a person that's building your business, if you're not focused on what drives you, what ultimately got you the initial eyeballs, and then just to do what's popular or fleeting, then you'll eventually get lost in the mix when whatever you're doing is no longer working and it's not your passion. And to me, I never want to be there. So like everything I put out, everything I share, all the content, it's because our practice demands it. It's what the people need, even if they don't want it. And it's what I know that I can go to bed every single night and know that I shared from my best integrity, best from the heart, and know that I'm doing what I think is best for the people and not what will feed the algorithm. I know that right now I should be jumping on the carnivore bus and talking about only carnivore, but it would totally go against my value system and integrity. And so I don't do it. And even though I probably missed this whole popularity bus, and that's okay.
Yeah, no, I'm 100% on the same page with you as that. And it's like this is kind of unrelated, but also related. I was listening to another business podcast or mastermind group, and he was referring to a guy that was not even in the same space. Like I think he was like the cover model for like romance novels or something totally unrelated. But he had this massive, massive social media following, and like everything that he could ever want from a social media standpoint, he had at his fingertips. He turned it all off so that he could
Wow.
go to Montana to be a cattle rancher in Montana with zero social media presence, and he's happier. Like to me, like that's a pretty cool litmus test as well. Like if I could simply turn it all off, would I still do what I'm doing? Would I be happy doing what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis? And when I try and like step back and look at my own life, like I love making the physical product with the bricks. I love putting out the content. I love training. I love bodybuilding. I love, interacting with other competitors in the space. I love coaching people. And I could totally do all of that without a social media presence whatsoever.
Right.
So like there may be a day and time where I just like decide to turn it all off because I don't need that forward facing superficial layer to find my sense of fulfillment and happiness. And I know the same is true with you. And I feel like if you've got a great practice, if you've got that bedrock foundation for the business, the brand, the legacy that you're building, then you're going to have enough content coming in, enough employees coming in, enough clientele coming in simply from word of mouth because you're putting out a superior product that you don't necessarily need to lean on and leverage the social media presence as a funnel to get that business in the first place.
Yeah, I think it's you see people with millions of followers and then they're selling like a little e-guide or something. And if that guide is not good, yes, you're gonna make a ton of money just because you have such a large following. But maybe the next time you put out something, they're gonna go, oh no, her stuff is crappy. And I would hate to be that person. So we pride ourselves in our practice where our test results, the assessments, the things we do in our groups, like they are just as top notch as our infographics that go viral. And I expect that level of, even though there's only like one or two people that will see it of our clientele, I expect that excellence because you never know whose hands it'll get into. And I just never want to be like, oh, they look great on social media or public facing or their marketing materials great, but the behind closed doors or behind a paywall, they suck. And I would hate to have that. So we go through these exercises where I will pretend I'm a client and I will go through our whole process and think, where are there gaps? Where is it that the flow is not good? Where am I confused? Like I'm go through the questionnaires and what can be improved, what looks better. And that is where I spend so much of my time. And then if we have any complaints or we have any praises, we try to dig deeper into that of like, what did we do wrong this time? How can we improve? And like you said before in my podcast, it's anything that happens in our practice, it's my fault. So like anything that a client or a person is dissatisfied with, like I need to own it and be able to speak to it. And if we have a better practice, I can speak to it a lot more intelligently, a lot more with integrity versus if I was, just I just want a quick sale, I just want a quick win. And I think going back to what you were saying, for me, I left a six-figure job to do this. And we knew that nutritionists on average make about 50,000 across the US. I'm sure it's more now with inflation, but so we had a heart to heart, my husband and I, of do I want to cut down my salary by over 100% and go down to maybe in years of success, I'll hit $50,000. And are you willing to do that? And I was okay with it because it became my passion because I was so sick, rock bottom, suicidal, my son taken away from me, all of those things that I knew that money and the physical, whatever, was not enough to make me happy. And so I said, if I can just hit 50, we can survive. So that was our goal. And our first year, I probably, with just doing a little bit of social media content, we probably hit like $20,000. And we're like, I don't know if I'm going to hit that 50,000. And I really thought I wasn't going to be able to hit it, but I just kept going. And over a couple years, we hit and we surpassed that. And now I know it's like the amount of energy and love and heart and integrity you put into stuff and you really try to make something that people need, the people will come. And I truly, truly believe that. And so I think for me, because I came from a dark place coming into this business or this practice, I'm always in it for the people because I was sick at one point and I am able to get better. And I know that with a shift in mindset and doing the hard thing every single day and doing it consistently, you can have tremendous change. That now that is what I'm trying to instill in our clients and our practice in our community.
No, 100%. And that rings true in all of your messaging. Like I've never doubted your integrity or like your actual initiative and motives because it's transparent, it's authentic. And when you talk to somebody, when you put stuff out online and you know it's coming from a place of authenticity, like there's no question. Like people know real. Like they can feel it. Even though if they can't describe it or put their finger on it, they just know it to be true. So yeah, 100% agree with you and know that you're in it for the right reasons. On that note though, have you ever stepped back and asked yourself, at what point do I need to scale more? Do I need to keep growing more, or should I just be not necessarily, maybe satisfied, maybe content, but with the concept of enough? Like, what is enough for you? Like, at what point is trying to get bigger and bigger and scale and get better and better becoming a detriment to who you want to be? Or would that even be an issue? Like, at what point do you draw a line in the sand and say, I do not want to necessarily grow bigger. I want to just simply take stock in pride and happiness and fulfillment in what I've got currently. I feel like that's the struggle that a lot of entrepreneurs have because we are always so much so like, let's get bigger, better, faster, improve in some form or fashion.
Yeah, I don't think any business can just stay the same. I think you brought that up in my podcast too. It's either you're growing or you're going to die. Like it's just inevitable because there will always be a competitor business that will do what you're doing and will do it better. So like that's inevitable in any business, but I think there's a way that you can scale and grow without having to be like I just need to rent a bigger space or bring more people on. And I mean, I will be the first to acknowledge. So when we were growing, we initially hired some people that I wasn't 100% certain about. So I was like, let's just test the waters. And as I sharpen my skills and sharpen my tools of like what I define as good, excellent team members, as well as are really sticking to our values, there were people that didn't cut it. And as I had mentioned or alluded to in the very beginning, we cut like 4 or 5 people in 1 or 2 weeks. And it was because we went through our what are our core values and do these people fit that? And while some of them had the greatest skill sets, they weren't the people that I thought would represent nutrition with Judy as well. And so we made the hard decision of letting go of some of these part-time workers. And one of them was really, really good in their game. But now we have a solid foundation of our team, and it's a little less than 10 people, but these people are the right people in the right seats of the right bus. And if you read Good to Great, you'll know what I'm talking about. But it's now it's I know we're probably going to need to hire a little bit more, but can we do, it's like so in the book, they talk about you hire 5, treat them like you hired 10, and then you pay for 8. So that's like the sort of model. And I believe in that fully. So I expect our team to have excellence. And if I don't see it, we bring it up because that's one of our core values. And I expect the same to me as well. And so we are trying to pay them at a level that can meet that 8 number. And we're not fully there, just being fully candid. But so when it's scaling, it's not just let me just hire anyone. We have a spot to fill and let's just fill that. It's doing it very thoughtfully and knowing that maybe there is a spot to fill. And unless you find the right person, maybe they're not the person. And a lot of times it goes by character, right? Because I think that skills can be assumed. Skills can be learned over time. You cannot teach someone character, integrity, truth. And that was one of the things, like as I grow, people know me as Nutrition with Judy. And it's, are you joining us because you believe in our mission or because you know that I have a platform? Like, and I have a hard time discerning that, to be really honest now. And so it's a balance of growing smartly, but not just like, let me just throw money at problems and hopefully it'll go away. Cause I don't think that's the answer either.
It's crazy, and I know you can totally relate with this, but like in business, the make or break factor is so much so the relationships and the people that are involved within an organization, a corporation, a business, a company. Like I look back on all the people that we've hired and fired and dealt with over the years, and like as the business owner, I've gotten so much better at knowing early on if they're a good fit or not. Whereas in the beginning, like you just don't have that experience, but so much of it just becomes dependent upon time in the saddle, time in the seat, working with people, communicating with people, figuring out what their strong points are, what their weak points are, and catering positions for those strengths. But it's like you cannot read that in a book and know how to become better at hiring and firing. Like, that's just something you have to do over time and repetition. But yeah, it's crazy how big an impact the type of people in your organization make. And if there's anybody in there that is not there for the right reasons, that is, it's like a cancer, like it just festers. Like you just got to get them out. And I've become committed to hiring early and firing early if it's not a good fit. Like rather than trying to draw that out and fix people, I've made way too many mistakes. And I know you probably say the same, like trying to fix people that are not wanting to be fixed. Like you can't help people that are not wanting to be helped.
Totally. I mean, let me ask you. So there's always that balance of whether it's with business or with individuals. At what point do you say, no, I need to work more, it's grit, resilience, to where you're like, no, that really is a bad business idea and you got to let go? At what point? And I know that's so hard, but even with individuals, there might be certain times where you say, no, let me see if I could correct certain things or correct certain behaviors, or let me help them get to a level of excellence. But at a certain time, you're like, no, they probably got to go. So at what point, and maybe there is no defined set and it's all individual, but Yeah, that's something I struggle with of when do I say, and I think I've been slowly following the model of hire early, fire fast too, but I'm curious your thoughts.
It's tough. I mean, like we literally just parted ways with an employee that was here for 2 years, and I held on to him way longer than I should have. But I
Okay.
did so because, and I don't want any of this to come across as disrespectful towards him at all. But I don't think he's gonna listen to this podcast anyways. But like, he had a very rough, upbringing. He didn't have a father figure. He was the oldest of all his siblings, so he had to carry a lot of that weight. And I knew all that going into it. And I wanted to be a leader in his life. I wanted to be a solid, firm foundation that he could, benefit from and leverage. And like he was not very good from a personal skill standpoint. Like he didn't know how to communicate with people. He didn't know how to have a proper attitude. And I kept, saying, okay, it's because he didn't have the right upbringing. Let me keep fighting for him. Let me just be that solid positive in his life, and then hopefully that will improve. And 2 years later, it never really improved. Like there was a little incremental improvement, but like he was never appreciative of what I was trying to do, and he was never willing to learn when I tried to help him with behavioral skills. And I think the main thing there is like he wasn't willing to learn. He wasn't willing to want to try and improve. Had it been the same person with the same issues, but had a student mentality and willingly tried to improve, I could have worked with that all day and night. But if someone is
Sure.
unwilling to learn, they don't have a student mentality, then no matter what your intentions are, no matter how much time is allotted, like if they're not willing to learn, they're simply not going to get better, and you're wasting your time trying.
Yeah, one thing I learned is trust your gut instinct because there's something that allowed you to get to this level of success. And if you were to just tap into that more, so what we do in our interviews, which I probably shouldn't even be telling publicly, is but we ask hard questions on purpose. And it's not the answer we're looking at, but we're trying to see how do you react to that? How do you squirm? And what you, so like one example is we'll ask, like, tell me a day in your childhood. What did it look like? And it's really like, what do you bring up and how do you bring it up and like what length do you bring it up, and you're trying to have them squirm because a little in in questions that people aren't so used to getting, you get to see a little bit more of their color, not the questions that they've prepared of like my greatest asset is or my biggest weakness is and here's how I resolve it, right? Like those things people can learn and memorize. But if you ask them a question that is so curveball, then you get to see a little bit more of their side and you will possibly have a gut feeling of, ooh, like I don't know about that, right? And I think that also for me, I've noticed with at least one or two of the people we let go, I had a little bit of a yellow flag when I first interviewed them, but we needed that spot filled so bad. So I was like, I'm gonna make it work. But I realized I should have listened to my gut feeling, even though back then I just sort of try to ignore it because I was like, oh, I did the same as you of I think I can make this work. I will do things or I will support in a way. But I realized no, it was also a burden on the rest of the team, and that's also not fair to the rest of the team as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, because like I said, it's a cancer. Like if someone is there for the wrong
Yeah.
reasons, then that could bleed into the vibe, the culture there, the workplace, and then it could make other team members that are positive start to feel the weight of that negativity, and then it's not fair to anybody. So you got to cut that cancer out early on. We've changed how our interview process is pretty extensively over the years. Like now, it's pretty exhaustive. Like we may even for entry level positions, like we have them do a pretty extensive questionnaire, and then I jump on a Zoom call with them, and then we have them come shadow so they can get a feel for the work and whether then they work alongside other people that are currently there, so we can see if that vibe is good. And then I have them submit a video that they create that kind of like showcases a lot of their personality, and that really weeds a lot of people out because you can tell if they're lazy, if they're procrastinating, if they put forth any effort. The video may be terrible, but if they put forth a ton of effort, like I can work with effort all day long. But if they're
Right.
just like, like if they don't even do it, obviously they're not a good candidate. So like weeding people out early via those, obstacles on the front end, I think has been super helpful for us.
Yeah, yeah. I think that is another curveball. And I think that makes so much sense because yeah, if people are waiting to the last minute to do it and they just sort of band-aid everything together, it's a sign of what's the guarantee that they won't do that in your work. So I think that makes so much sense.
Yeah, 100%. So I kind of want to peel the curtain back on your organization
Yeah.
structure. Not so much like who does what role, but like what all does Nutrition with Judy consist of? Like when people ask me about my different legs of the business, I've got the coaching, the course, the bricks, the community, the apparel. Like I've got all these different things I kind of dive into. So when somebody asks you, hey, what is Nutrition with Judy? Like what is that in its entirety?
Yeah, let me answer. I just thought of the question that when you said, when is enough enough? I think I have all these visions of things that I want to release to the world. And then maybe when all of those are done, I'll probably say it's enough. It definitely is not a dollar amount. It definitely is not even a number count, even though that's what that our big, hairy, audacious goal is we served 1 million customers. But that honestly, I mean, it drives me, but it doesn't drive me. It's like I would love to get into children's books and have ones that are meat friendly, but that shares value systems of like integrity, passion, even mind body work. So I think once all of those are done, maybe I'll be like, okay, I'm done. I'm good. Right. So I think that's what drives me. And I think what has changed for me over the years is the pace of it. So I was very driven where I would stay up late and work, and I still work a lot, but I have boys now. And so to me, this is their pivotal time before they hit their teens where I get to spend time with them. So yesterday, for example, I took the whole day off and I went with them to a field trip. So I get to see like who are they hanging out with? What are their peers like, right? Are they grit minded or resilient, or are they just very negative Nancy's? And so I was very curious. And to me, that matters so much more. So I may be a little bit slower in releasing a book, but I think in the long run, again, I think it's okay, because if my boys are not okay in their teens, I'm going to be in a world of hurt. So that's how I wanted to answer that. But um, so we have a private practice, and really everything is revolved around that. So we also obviously have the social media, because I naturally have a creative mind where I want to design things. Like all our graphics are made in house unless we're using pictures, but um, all our infographics, our interviews. I love picking people's brains just to learn from them. Like that is truly why I do it. And it's like, yay, I have a platform. So then people are willing to come on my channel and I get to ask them the questions that I want to ask, or for my clientele. And then beyond that, we have the practice. So we do, I guess the bulk of the practice is one-on-one clients. And I have a team of nutritional therapists that will meet with one-on-ones. I do a few of the one-on-ones, but I don't do a lot. The main reason is it sucks me dry. So like if I do, I'm too empathetic to a fault. So if you become my one-on-one, I end up like I lose sleep over, and I still do, and even in our groups, but I get so invested in a probably not so healthy way. And so I can only have a certain amount of one-on-ones because it starts really impacting even my sanity and mental health. So that's my boundary. So we have one-on-ones, and then and then we have groups. So we have a group for the chronic environmental illnesses, so mold, Lyme, we have that. And then we have a separate mind body program, which we realize that a lot of people are stuck in their illnesses because either they believe that this is forever their lot in life, or they've had trauma in their past and they can't get over it, and they think they did but they haven't. So we teach them some of the lay of the land, the education, and then how they can use tools to get out of it, and that it's their past, their whatever has happened to them can no longer be an excuse to not get better. And so that we fight and vouch and have them focus on things that will make them start living a better life of excellence. So everything is really our bread and butter really is the practice, and then fine tuning that. So if it's that we are now offering a new test, then I have to work on, so how does that whole process work? How do we get the test? How do we get the test kits out to them? And then when we get the results back, I hate it when doctors send out results and they're like, everything looks good, you're good to go. But then you see like certain markers are imbalanced. Like, what does that mean? So for every test that is done in our practice, we have templates. So we create this whole, or I create these templates that explain, these are why these markers are imbalanced. This is what it could mean. Here's the things to do. Here's your next steps. And we create tactical things to make their blood work seem more tangible than just, oh, okay, my yearly annual looks good, and then I move on. And so we do the same thing with stool tests, blood tests, and functional tests. And then in our one-on-ones, we do notes and all these things. So my work, a lot of it now is managing our team. So we have weekly calls where we talk about specific clients, our groups, and it's just operating and managing a lot of it with the strategy. So I do also a lot of research to even funnel and support the community, our clients, because we always hear about a new illness that we've never heard of. So I do a lot of the research of what's our take on it, what does the research look like, and then I then share some of it on social media, but again, we've really down prioritized our social media because we're really at capacity right now. And then eventually we'll a lot of the knowledge we learn in house, which we don't get to share a lot publicly. We'll do some articles and we'll share free content as we can, but most of it will be in books, and that's one of our other goals. So it's like books, private practice, and then we believe in the barbell theory in terms of economics. So we give out a lot of free content, our YouTube videos, our free articles, which are a lot of our articles, if you're really self motivated, you can learn a lot of what we do in our practice, plus our social media or YouTube videos that we do. And then we don't service a lot of the middle. And then we service our hourly calls are probably more expensive than the average nutritional therapist, but that's why we try to balance it with a lot of the free content. Like you can get our carnivore cures without buying the book. You could get the free elimination diet protocol, our food and mood journal. We give you all of that for free. Or you can work with us and it's a little bit higher than the average nutritionist, because I think that's how we can balance the load. Because if you've ever worked with the really chronically ill, it's not as simple as, oh, you have diabetes, like here's the food to remove and here's the food to add, but it's a lot more complex cases that I have to protect my team a lot in terms of boundaries, because they are very empathetic souls. And oftentimes there are just a small select few that may, overstep the boundary of like, oh, they email back, let me email them a lot more. And it's, I have to protect my team because they want to help, because these people are truly very sick, but they are sick too. So that I have to just, be that protector in a sense. So that's a lot of what we do.
No, I love it. I love it. So you get the one-on-one in which people are working directly with your team about anything related to their illness, their ailments. And you've got the group setting. So are the people that are working one-on-one also in the group setting, or how is that structured?
Some people, so what we have found, so we initially opened up a carnivore group for support. And it was because we thought, okay, well, why don't we just have a group? Because I mean, I'm in the carnivore space. I just released a beginner's book. How am I supporting people that buy that beginner's book when a lot of my content is more advanced carnivore? And so we opened up a beginner's carnivore group, which was a little bit more expensive than all the other groups out there. And it's because you get practitioner care. What we found is that a lot of people don't want to join it, even though our one-on-ones, so the group was like $120 a month, but our one-on-ones are like 350, or it's a little bit more than that. So even though there's that stark difference in pay, people that are really chronically ill, that we realize they don't want to do groups. They're not well enough to be social. And so our one-on-ones are the bulk of our practice. And we do have people in the group. The mind body group has people from our one-on-one because we recommend it. Some of the SIRS, or our chronic inflammatory response syndrome group, has some people from our one-on-ones too. But I would say our group is a very small pie of our bigger practice.
The main pie being the one-on-ones you said.
Yeah, I'd say it's one-on-ones, selling some of the supplements too. So that's a portion. It's so every time someone does a test or a one-on-one, we'll try to band-aid the situation so they can immediately feel better with some level of supplements, whether it's gut supports, maybe it's like certain minerals for just a bit. And so that brings in some level of income as well. And then we have the books too. So the books, our carnivore cure version, the first one still sells, and it's an audio as well as ebook, and then the paperback. But I would say it's a lot of all of that that brings the sell. I don't think the one-on-one, I don't do the finances in my company. So like you're like, I don't know. I don't think the one-on-one is the main revenue driver, but I think it's through one-on-ones that maybe supplements sales happen. Our website has it. So if you read an article, maybe you'll see a supplement on there that you'll just start like poking into and you'll see it. But I don't know the exact breakdown because that's my husband, because I don't care for numbers, which he drives him crazy. But it doesn't drive me. So if I'm not going to, we run our whole practice with red, yellow, green. It's the best thing. I think I always talk about green is like what brings you passion, but also brings in money, or like brings in efficiency, efficacy. Yellow is like, you kind of like it, but you don't, it brings in money, but you don't really like doing it all that much. And then red is something you absolutely hate, but you have to do. And so I try to get our team in its entirety in the green. So like, what are you good at? What do you love? What will bring in income? And then I also have them look at that in their personal lives. Like, what's your green? So with all that said, the finance part is probably a red for me. So I don't touch it. But I mean, Kevin will give me feedback in certain things. So then I'll try to share stuff. But I really go with what I'm passionate about. And sometimes I miss it. So, like the carnivore group was a mistake. And there wasn't a strong need for it. And we were okay with that. And we're like, you know what? We learned. You either learn or you grow. And in that situation, it was a learning lesson that there is no real niche or need for that group at a higher price than like the $30-$50 groups out there. And we were okay. And we closed it down after a few months.
What is your green? Like of the red, yellow, green, what is your personal green?
Gosh, it's a lot of everything, which is, I'm sure, the same for you. That's why you have a lot of things. But I definitely have a creative mind. I love writing. So I think books will always be a part of our practice or our business. I like researching, and I think in from the Good to Great book, if you talk about the porcupine or the no, sorry, the hedgehog, it's like finding that perfect sweet spot that you are really good at, that maybe not a lot of other people have that gift and talent, and that also is able to grow your company. But I think mine is being able to distill complex information into easier information. And so if I learn about, so I'm going to release a video soon that talks about how blood sugar can go up on a carnivore diet. And I make it really simple of why I think it's happening. But I do research and I distill it into in a way that the average person can hear. Like, why do you have to use hard words when you're talking about stuff? Like, I don't need to show that I'm smart. Like, I'm sorry if I have to come on YouTube to prove that I'm smart, then something is wrong with me. So for me, I just use the most basic words because my mom was sick and I had her believe in carnivore and she's healing. And I want everybody to be able to understand the most basic effects. Like, hey, if you eat sugary foods, your blood sugar is going to go up too. Right. And so that just seems so logical to me. And so I think that is a green. So I like doing graphics. I like writing. I like leadership and building teams and inspiring. Those things all really inspire me. But I think I have to do a lot of everything. I cannot only do graphics or I cannot only write forever. Like I can't do that either.
Totally. What do you use for graphics? Because your graphics are phenomenal.
We use a lot of everything. I feel like our team lately, just because it's shareable, it's we use a lot more of Canva. But for my original graphics, like with the steak and all the nutritional, so we'll use a mix of like Adobe products. So that would be the main thing. So we build it literally from scratch. So all the graphics in my Carnivore Cure book, the tables, they're not tables, they're lined items. Like literally, it took forever. Like the ones that there was like a graphic, it's the most nutrient dense foods. Those are literally lines, they're not tables. And I mean, that's how you get really crisp images. So I have a designer on our team now that she uses all of those suites of products too. I've used PowerPoint, like that's how I started. It was just, I think the key message isn't like, yeah, you have to be super good. It's just, it took a lot of effort to get here and a lot of practice. And I think you could do it in Canva, you could do it in PowerPoint, you could do it in the Adobe tools like Photoshop and all these other ones, or like InDesign. But it's really putting in that effort. I think anything you do, if you put in the effort and you try to refine and master your skill, it can become a green if you like it. And if you feel like you're forcing it, that's when I think it's kind of the yellow and it might not really be the green. And that's where we're circling back to, the social media stuff. If you follow just what's popular, it will eventually become a yellow and eventually become a red. So I think in the long game, if you want to make it 5 years out and you're still editing YouTube videos and you hate it, like it's not going to work. And I think the average YouTube lifespan for successful influencers is about 5 to 7 years because they burn out.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
Makes total sense. I actually am reading your book I'm listening to it on Audible. I've had it forever. I've always referenced it. I've recommended it, but I was listening to that with my employee as we were driving down for Hack Your Health, and you've got a lot of tables in there, and
I know, I'm sorry.
you're reading the table, and I keep looking at my employee as we're driving. I'm like, man, she's going all the way with this table, and you do.
I know.
I appreciate it.
So what I learned is, so that was a struggle of mine with reading the audiobook. I was like, do I include the tables because there's so many tables, or do I just give it as a separate PDF? So we landed in the middle, and so we did get dinged for it. So I think in certain I don't read my comments because again, I'm like sensitive in that way. So but I did see one that said, oh my gosh, she's reading all her tables, she should have just given it. So I learned from that, right? So like that's where I'm like, okay, I'm not going to read the reviews because it sucks, but it helps me to also grow. So like I will totally take that. And so in our next book, when there's a graphic, we'll just say accompanying graphic version, blah blah blah. Like we'll have them, go look at it. But yeah, I wasn't sure how to make it comprehensive, and we just have an unusual amount of tables in our book, and so it was like, what's the balance? Because if I don't share any of the tables, then they're going to miss a lot of what's in the book as well. So I
No,
don't
I
know.
think you do a great job. I mean, I think like your tables, your graphics, your references, like they're all rock solid. So I appreciate it. I enjoyed listening to all the micronutrients in eggs and seashells and all that good stuff. So it's all positive in
Well,
my book.
thank you. Thank you.
Um, so as far as the funnels that go into your one-on-one, your group setting, like what would you say the primary funnel or driver is? Is it more so the books, more so the social media? Like if you could only pick one, what would be the one that you'd want to emphasize?
Yeah, I know this sounds a little crazy, but so I think we got a lot of clients when I was going around and doing marketing for the first book. So when I was sharing about all the nuances about carnivore I learned while writing that book, unknowingly, I didn't know I was marketing my practice. And so we got a ton of new clients through that. And so all of a sudden, I had to pause in marketing the book because, again, at that time, we didn't have any employees. And so I all of a sudden was working, doing like 8 clients a day, even through the weekends. And I got to a point, I mean, I think there was a month with just one on one sessions. I probably brought in $30,000. And I just told my husband, I said, I can't do this. I mean, so if you think about it, 30,000 in a month, plus if they buy supplements, plus if they bought whatever else, like it's good money. But it was so much on me that I told my husband I'm not going to do it anymore. So there was a period on YouTube where we kept saying we're not taking any more clients. So people get confused when they see those older videos, but it was because I'm not driven by money. So I got really stuck where I wanted to share the book, but all of a sudden I got bogged down by so many clients, and that was my struggle. So seeing all of that, I don't know exactly where all the clients come from. I know that sounds weird, but we've never really marketed before. So I know a lot of the social media is marketing. I do think people are coming through YouTube now, but initially we didn't have a lot of a YouTube presence. So I think it's a lot of the social media, but where exactly it's targeted, I don't know because we've been fortunate enough that we didn't have to dive into that analytics. I know as we grow, we will absolutely do that and have the funnels and so on and so forth. But I really think maybe because I was giving out free content earlier, and then it's like, oh, get this handout if you sign up for our newsletter, and then we were able to sell through the newsletter. I'm not entirely sure numbers wise. Like this is our heavy hitter. We've never had to really do that, so I don't exactly know. Now I know that sounds crazy to business owners, but we will get better. That is an initiative we are focusing on as we grow. Is where are our customers coming from, and then or clients, and then how can we better fuel that part instead of disseminating to everywhere.
We need to do this podcast again and have you and Kevin side by side. So like he can answer some question, you can answer. That'd be kind of
I
fun.
know.
Be good.
That's so funny. Yeah. So one thing I am planning on doing with the Carnivore Cure version 2. So I've written 60 or 70% of it, but then I paused it because I felt like deep down I wasn't ready to finish the book. I wasn't sure if I knew enough to want to share the next version, which has the diet, but then all these other avenues that you could look into if the diet's not working enough. And so I just felt like I know I promised the community I'd get it out by this date, but I just don't think it's ready. Just like we promised a practitioner program, but I don't think I'm ready to share one yet. So I'm not going to just commit to my word and get out a crappy thing. I want it to be, if it's going to go out, it's going to be excellent. So we're pausing on that for a few years. But I think what I'm going to do, because a lot of people ask me, how do you get out books? I can't get myself to write one. And then secondly, like where do you get your research from and stuff. So I might vlog a few of them just to show like, guys, this takes a lot of effort. This graphic takes a lot of energy, and doing the research and looking for all the data, all of this takes energy. So maybe just sharing a little bit of how I do it so that people understand, and maybe they're more bought into like, hey, I helped write that book, or I helped pick the graphic that's going to be in chapter 1. And so I think it'll be fun to do more like a crowd share or crowdsourcing of helping the book come to life in what they need of like, should I read the tables in my next audiobook, right? Like, I think that would be fun to get people's thoughts on it before the final version comes out.
And I think it'd be awesome to see your workflow with things because
Mm.
like I love the final product, but I love the journey all the more. Like I want to see what people's workflow, like what softwares they're using, what the research steps are, what resource like that's what interests me. So I think that would be super beneficial. And plus it just gives people more buy-in, like you're saying. So I think that'd be a great approach. Um, one thing I'm curious as far as like you've got kids. How old are your kids now?
They're turning 8 and 10, but right now they're 7 and 9.
7 and 9. Okay, so I've got Rigel, who's 2 years old, and you and I are both go-getter types. Like we want to just conquer the world, take over, build an empire, all that good stuff. And I wouldn't want it any other way. But how do you how do you juggle that and making sure that you're totally present with your kids? Because there's times where I come home late and I get like 30 minutes with my son, and it's like, wow, did I really spend my day doing the most important thing? And sometimes I have to, reiterate that. And here lately, I've always sacrificed sleep. Like sleep's the last thing on my priority list. And all throughout my prep, I think I probably averaged like 4.5 hours of sleep, which is nothing to brag about, not good, not healthy, not optimal. And here lately, like these past 2 weeks, I've been trying to legitimately sleep more. And in doing so, I don't get near as much work done. Like my to-do list is not done by the end of the day. There's probably 3 hours I'm sacrificing every single day by sleeping more. But I've noticed that I sleep more and I wake up next to my son. I just sit here and watch him sleep for like an hour or so before I get up and start my day. And like I'm not technically getting anything done on paper. That's not affecting the bottom line of the company, but I feel like it's time well spent. So for you, also being driven, also being motivated, also wanting to conquer the world. How do you kind of juggle that between like family endeavors and just making sure that you're never distracted or not present with your kids as they're growing?
Yeah. So I would say with your sleep thing, I would just think long run, right? So if you want to build this empire for years to decades, you have to sleep enough so that you can build it. So one day, Rigel will be old enough and he doesn't want to spend as much time with you. And so then you will have to have had enough sleep so that then you're still functioning at the capacity you are now. So that's how I think of it. But it is hard. There have been days where um, I I put the kids to bed and then I'm like, man, I just literally spent only 30 minutes with them, or I barely saw them today and I feel a little sad. But I would say that overall, um, we prioritize, or like I prioritize making sure that I spend time with the family. So, one thing, for example, Kevin really, it's really important to him that we eat dinner together. So, I think almost every single dinner we eat together. And the thing is, sometimes it's just Kevin and me talking as well instead, and not as much like centering it around the kids. But I always try to at least dedicate putting them down. So we will do like a bedtime routine, even though they're at the age they are. We'll like have a prayer. We'll listen to a podcast. We'll talk about their day. And one big thing I also do every single day is I pick them up after school. And we did the math. So we're like, okay, if we had you not pick them up every single day, it would have saved us probably the way that we did it was about 6 to 7 hours a week. And what if we just then dedicated 2 hours of quality time with them and we foregoed me picking them up every day? And so we were almost going to commit to that and just get a babysitter because we're like, I don't have enough hours in the day to get everything I need to get done. But I just thought about how one day I'm going to look back and regret that I wasn't the one. So again, even if I'm growing slower, I'm okay doing that right now because it's such a pivotal time in their lives that if I'm not there and they're sharing and connecting with some other random lady that we hired, they miss that with me and I don't get to experience that. And so while yes, I'm probably growing a little bit slower than I'd like, to me it's my kids are my everything. And so I would never forego that. And it took a while for me to get here. So before I would just sleep very little, like you said. And I would try to cut corners in the ways that I would maybe I would just sleep less, or I would have Kevin go to dinner without me, and I would try to do these things. But it's like, if I'm doing this for the long game, is it all worth it to cut these corners right now? Because never in anyone's deathbed do they go, I wish I worked more. I wish I built my empire a little bit more. But they will always say, I wish I spent a little bit more time with family. And I know in those moments where you're like, you're seeing your little kid play with Legos and you're like thinking of all the business stuff you have to do, it's really hard. But the balance I do with that is I will do things that I like to do too with them. So it's not like they're just playing their little games, and sometimes they do, but it's so that I'm fully present with them. And some days, the other day, Caleb had to go somewhere, and I just had my husband go because that day I really had to do work. But yesterday, for example, I spent all day with them. So it's this fine balance. And if you know that you're in it for the long run, I think that's what makes it easier. But it took me time to get to this place because before I used to just try not to sleep and, try to muscle through, and I could do everything. But if your health starts getting affected, and where I was starting to notice it is I just felt a little bit more brain fog when I would do interviews because I wasn't sleeping enough. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I need to get better at my craft. And sometimes things are going to have to be better prioritized. And so, for example, I don't go to many conferences. I only went to Hack Your Health because it's local, but anywhere that it's not local, I won't go. A lot of podcasts that I get asked to be on, I don't do it because I have to I'm in a building phase right now and not in a marketing phase. So I say no to a lot of things because again, it's like, do I spend that hour with my children writing the book, or do I go do a podcast where I have to mentally and physically prepare for it? Or do I just stay home? And so that's how I do that balance now. So I have learned really strongly to not run after the shiny thing and then focus on where's our priority, what's our big rocks this quarter. And if it doesn't fit into that, the answer is no, it doesn't matter who it is.
Yeah, I think learning to say no and just fully embracing any repercussions that come from that, whether positive or negative, is so important. And I used to never say no. Like anything came up, I was just always the yes man. Like, yeah, I'll sacrifice sleep. I'll be there. I'll speak at that conference. I'll have you on the podcast. I'll be on your podcast. Like I'll do it all. And now it's like, especially now that I have a kid, it's like if I say yes to everything, I would get no time with him, and I wouldn't be the best bodybuilder I'd be. I wouldn't be the best leader. I wouldn't be the best employer. I wouldn't be the best husband. So like now, if I cannot easily see how that's moving the needle that I'm trying to move forward, that's just a hard no, no questions asked, no regrets whatsoever. And I think that's a very hard thing for people that are aggressive, to do, but I think that's so incredibly important.
Yeah, I see a lot of the big business people online and they don't have children. They're either not married, they don't have children, they don't have families. And I that would not be a fulfilling life to me. So like in my personal life, agreeing is my children. And I don't like to do a lot of the things that they like to do. Like when they're playing video games or they're playing these games that I have no interest in, I'll hang out with them, but maybe that's not the thing I'll do with them. And we'll find something that we all agree on that we love. Right. So it's I get it's hard to just hang out with little kids all the time, but it's just finding, well, when you do hang out, maybe making it really top priority and high quality, and also just finding the moments that you can. So we all have to eat. And it's probably better not to eat at your desk for the digestion and health. So maybe just spending that time and going to eat with your son, which will add the time to your overall time with him.
Yeah, we always had dinner together, and I'm lucky for whatever reason. My son loves tractors and mowing the lawn, so I can mow the lawn with him on my lap, and that's like filling his cup.
Awesome.
I'm feeling productive at the same time, so that's like one of the bonding moments we have. And I obviously have to mow the lawn, so it makes sense. But yeah, I think carving that time out, being present with your kids when you're with them, and I think it's also important that they see you work too. Though there's been this
Right.
push that they like you don't want to work in front of your kids, but I think it's important that they see that. They see that passion that you have with the work that you're doing. And I know your kids are seeing you do all that, like as you're writing your books and working on all your coaching calls. So I think that's also incredibly important. So they're going to be set up for success for sure.
Yeah, I totally think that they should see the process. So we let them see our successes and our failures. And I think there was a book I read a long time ago that showed that if someone shares, like, oh, dad got a new job, and they don't know like all the effort it took to get there, the kids would just go, yay, and then they move on. But if they see the dad like practicing for the job and in the interviews and then struggling for periods and even not getting a job and going through other interviews, then that ability to get that job becomes so much more sweeter. And so I think even writing the books, I mean, the kids see the books and now they don't really. So Aiden's name is in the book and he's like, oh my God, my name's in here. And I'm like, why do you think? Right. Like he didn't make the connection. And he was a lot younger when I wrote that book. But with my new book, I mean, they see me in front of the computer, they see me work, and they see me work late hours sometimes. And so we talk about this is how you're able to afford this meal, right? Like we talk about those things. And Kevin is really hard at pushing them on the physical side. And so they have to do, I think they do 100 squats every day, and some days they're so tired, and he's like, sorry, you got to do it. And so then they're like crying doing it, but it's that level of, well, you could be smarter and do like 10 throughout the day and then get to the 100, or you wait till last minute and then you do all at once and you're like upset about it and trying to help get me to like save you from it. But I think all of those things teach them that it takes resiliency. And now my son is like, oh my God, I could see a little bit of muscle in whatever the exercise they're doing now. And it's those little things that teach them that it takes effort and energy. And it's hard sometimes as a mom. I want to be like, stop, Kevin, like stop pushing that hard work on them. But I see it. Just the other day we were at the park, and Caleb was they were trying to pull these bars and go across, and Caleb kept falling. And so we're like, we have to go. The sun is going down. Forget it. Like you could practice next time. And he's like, no, I'm going to do it again. And we waited, and finally he did it like almost in the dark, and it brought tears to my eyes because he was so mad at his dad, so mad, but he got it done. And so my husband's like, use that anger, use that fuel to get it done. And then I knew deep down, like, I know he'll be okay. Like I know he'll be okay, because that drove him, even though like I was getting mad at my husband, like stop pushing them. In that moment I was like, I know he'll be okay, even though sometimes he seems kind of soft. In that moment, I saw his anger and his fuel and drive. Like, I'm going to prove I can get over this like contraption. And he did it on his last time. And even though he used all the energy in his muscles, and that to me was like, okay, I know that when they go through struggles, they'll somehow make it out. And that makes it all worth it.
No, that's it's strange because like as you get older in life, you forget these things that you did as a child that are incredibly impactful. But there's like a few things that stand out in my memory. There's this one instance where I was probably pretty cocky as a kid. I was telling my dad I could outdo him in something, and he went out and he cut down this massive tree and he brought it back with a tractor and he had it cut into two halves and he gave me an axe and he had an axe. And the goal was to see who could chop through this trunk faster, him or me. And he had all the experience, he had the technique, but I just had like this willingness to beat him and this like probably more muscle endurance because I was younger, and I beat him. And that was like the first moment in my upbringing where I bested him at something physical like that. And looking back on it, like that had a profound impact on my
Mhm.
confidence levels and just like the ability to power through something challenging even when you're tired. And I feel like, we need like that. We need that as adolescents, as youth, as people growing up into the world. Like we need to have adversity and overcome that. So I think what he's doing there with the squats, and that's awesome.
Yeah, it's hard because I know there's like a fine balance where people will say that's going to scar your children, and they don't do 100 squats all the time. They shift their exercise, but it's, doing something hard every single day. And I feel like our children are spoiled. Like the average child this day and age is very spoiled, including my children. And so we try to instill a little bit of grit and resiliency in little things they do, like they do jujitsu, or they'll do this other activity now. But it's if you don't put struggle in a person, they don't know how to overcome it. And it is in the struggle that we are able to define our life and to bring successes. It's when things are hard, we know like this is how we get out of it. And I really think when things are hard, that's your body, your life telling you that things need to change. And if we don't know how to change, that's how we get stuck in depression. We stick to the bad foods. We don't move around. And those are things that make us unwell. And then we're not even focused on trying to get better. And I think it's when at a young age, or even now, if you can just focus on every single day, I'm going to try to get a little bit better. Those are the things that will move the needle so that you can live the life that you truly want to.
Yeah, and this kind of goes hand in hand with what we are talking about on your podcast about the food addiction panel and having this mentality of it being somebody else's fault and we're just subjected to it. And I feel like when you overcome adversities and you recognize that you can see some benefit from the fruits of your labor, like you become unstoppable. You have the confidence to recognize that you can do anything that you set your mind to, and that's proven true time and time again as you do these hard things. So I think the more we're subjected to that, the better. So I think starting them off young like that is paramount and key. So I encourage you to keep doing what you're doing for sure.
Yeah, when I was in the intensive eating disorder facility, so we were there for 12 hours. You would go through every single meal. So they were trying to educate you in fullness and mindful eating and intuitive eating. And then you would see a therapist and a group therapist, and then you would see your psychiatrist to give you the medication. And in there, the psychiatrist told me, well, it seems like your life, you've always had a little bit of depression. And it just like if you had a headache and you're taking a little bit of over the counter medications, you just need to be on antidepressants your whole life. And there's nothing wrong with that. And that logic made sense to me. So I was like, okay. So I got on it, and it wasn't making me any better, or it wasn't really helping me get better. And I would try to follow everything that they were telling me to do in there, because this was me getting my son back once I got out. So I wanted to be the best student so I could get out. And every day I would follow their intuitive eating, and I would follow their mindful eating. And every time I'd fall and end up binging and purging again and again, I wasn't eating meat during that time. My brain went to, I know it's not my fault, because I am partially broken, as my psychiatrist told me. And so I need to forever take this medicine. And so I need to do the best I can, but it's not my fault. And that was the mindset I had in there. And then until I changed my diet and realized, oh my gosh, everything was a lie that I believed, it was only until then that I was able to overcome a lot of what I was struggling with. And so that's why I don't like it when people are like, you don't know my lot in life. You've never been there. And I'm like, you're right. I have never gone through the struggles you have, but I know so many different people in all walks of life that are so successful and that are doing their thing amidst all of what they've have been brought up with. I saw a guy the other day speaking at an international conference that has no arms and legs. And he's just on the front podium talking about how he's met like all the presidents. He's like an inspirational, motivational speaker. And I couldn't help but wonder, how do you even get around? And he defied all against all odds. And he is an international speaker that goes everywhere. So if he can do that, why can't we get over whatever has happened to us? And he has major trauma as well.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's like, what is actionable? What is useful? Like, even if all of that woe is me stuff is true, who the hell gives a damn? Like, there's no point
Right.
to it. It's not actionable. You can't take that and leverage it. Whereas if you say, okay, it's my fault. It's 100% my fault. I'm gonna reap by what I sow, and I'm gonna, fall by what I do. It's like you can become and do anything that you set your mind to. That's empowering. Like gives you the permission to conquer all. And I feel like anything that does not contribute to that is just wasted and useless information in your life.
Yeah, so we created a mind body program for this exact reason, because I've been there. I'm the victim, you don't get it. I'm struggling with an addiction, that's food. Like you struggle with drugs. Drugs you just abstain from, and eventually you get over it. Food you have to tempt yourself every day, multiple times a day, so you don't get it. Like that was my mantra. You don't get how it feels to be depressed, and you weren't born with like slight depression, as my psychiatrist told me. And I used that for so long, but it didn't get me anywhere. And if anything, I was more depressed than ever. And as I learned more, so you in a part of your brain, you have the limbic system, which is basically your memory of emotions, history. It basically teaches you, if you put a fork in the outlet and you get electrocuted, don't ever do that again, because it'll happen and you'll get electrocuted. So that's that limbic system, and it has like different parts of the brain. And the goal of that is to protect you. And I think the way that our society moves so fast, we learn a lot of things and we store it in our limbic system, but we're not able to say, no, that part of it, I'm just willing to learn that that was a hard thing and I can surpass that. And a lot of people then, when we're eating bad foods and we're stuck in this brain fog, we don't realize that certain things we have to defy what our limbic system is trying to protect us from. And the perfect example is, there was an athlete that loved being in the water, and she got her arm bit off. I forgot her name, but
Yeah.
it's Beth something.
Hmm.
Yeah, so she got her arm bit off by a shark. And in 2 years, not only did she go back in the water, but she won an award in her field. But how many people with that limbic system would even be scared to go near the beach? And you feel, when you're scared, your body starts releasing cortisol, all of those hormones that you're starting to tense up. And so I realize that a lot of our clients that have been sick for so long, I think they get really scared when they're trying to eat like a piece of meat that they're so sensitive to, or a new supplement that they've never tried before. And they start tensing up as if they're about to go into the ocean, and they start releasing all of these hormones and endorphins, and it immediately shuts them down for even being able to accept that new meat, like it's chicken, for example, and not having a histamine response. and they say no, see, my body's saying I can't handle it. But how much of that is our mind telling the body, hey, forewarning, I'm eating something that has made me sick, so I am scared, versus if you're in a calm state and you're like, I'm going to let this go. I will trust the process. Like, I'm probably healed a lot. I will eat this chicken and it'll make me better. And then maybe your body will then truly tell you, no, you're still not ready for the chicken. I think so much of the world, social media does such a good job. Media does such a good job of us focusing on the thing that makes us scared, the thing that makes us feared. There's studies that show that most people are willing to let go of a gain than lose a fear, right? So then if you are scared of losing something, you are willing to pay the money for that, not losing what you currently have, than gaining something that you don't have yet. So I think a lot of people that are stuck in chronic illness, they are scared. They are like, it is my trauma in my past, it was my upbringing, the stuff that I endured when I was younger. They hold on to that and they keep that in their identity unknowingly. And so they're walking into the world waking up with a lot more cortisol, a lot more stress in their body. And no wonder they can't do a lot more, because they're depleted in everything. They're scared to eat because they're afraid that it will hurt them. They're scared to eat because it might make them gain weight. And a lot of that is their brain is releasing all of these things to the rest of the body to make it a true thing to occur. And so in our mind body program, we're trying to unravel all of that. So we go through family dynamics, we go through core wounds of, when you were young, did your parents fight so much, or your dad was never home? So do you have a security core wound where you're afraid that if you don't go with the tide or you go with the norm, that you won't belong? So you just sort of hide your true feelings and thoughts, and you just go with the group. And that comes up and manifests as illness in the body, right? Because your body knows that there's a disparity between what you're sharing and what you really feel. And so we try to break all of these thoughts that we have. We go into addiction. All of us go into addiction because we feel there's a need for it. We don't know how to cope with life, or we have so much stress. So then we turn to alcohol, or we turn to food to try to balance those emotions. And initially that dopamine kick happens and we feel escape and we feel good and we're like, oh, now I can rest. But eventually that becomes an addiction because we need more and we need it more often. And eventually it ends up controlling our lives. And so I really think that addiction, it's a sign that something's wrong and we need to focus and heal that root cause of whatever the case may be. And then beyond that, I think a lot of it stems from your childhood. So was there a way that you didn't cope and now you're using food as an addiction, or drugs as an addiction, or work as an addiction, or whatever those things are? And so we try to distill all of that and then we give the tools. So not everyone will use the same tools to heal, but we challenge it and we try to give the ownership back to the person, because we see that it's so missing. I think people think I have chronic illness. It's an invisible illness that you don't understand. And so therefore you will never understand my situation and I'm going to forever be sick. And I feel that we need to break that mold and allow people to try to heal. And so it goes back to the mindset of grit, resilience. Like, today I feel sick, but I'm going to do the best I can. And I'm not going to focus on my illness. I'm not going to focus on all the negative and the things that I should be scared of in the internet. And I'm going to focus on getting better. And that is my main focus. And that's what we try to teach in the Mind Body program.
I love it. It's kind of crazy because mind body. I love the name mind body, because on your podcast we're talking about homeostatic set points and like
Yeah.
conservation stuff, and it's like people go their whole life at a similar composition, similar body weight, similar health, and they just assume that's who they are and what they're destined for. And then you have stories of people that are in that same situation that do something totally extreme, whether it's like a crazy building phase, they start working out, they do a competition prep, they lose 20% body fat, but in doing so, it breaks down all their internal belief systems of what they think they are as a person, who they think they are, what their identity is, and then it just totally flips their perspective. And now anything is an option, anything is a possibility, anything is an opportunity. And the same is true with people in their finance. Like, people will be stuck at a certain, financial threshold until they do something so obscene, so drastic, so incredible that it totally breaks all those internal belief systems. Same is true with their relationships, their career paths, their spirituality, whatever the case may be. Like, we have this wiring, this programming in our brain as to what we're supposed to be doing, that we're destined to be, and that anything counter to that is just not my reality. But then you do something that is you, and it just totally displaces that quote unquote reality. And then anything is possible. So I love what you're doing and focusing from the mind body standpoint and breaking those internal belief systems and shattering. I mean, giving people more option, more hope, and more perspective, more empowerment. So I think that's incredible. That's all
Yeah.
in your system as well. That's all part of the Nutrition with Judy umbrella.
Yeah, so you can do the program without being our client. There's some people that will then realize they need a little bit more support. And so they do one on one. And so it runs in cohorts. It's like every 3 months we have a small group. So it's like between 20 to 25 people. And they get really close because they share a lot of stuff and it goes really deep. In some of our videos, like I shared about my alcoholic dad. I never talked about that publicly, but I talk about it in the group. And that's probably where my drive came from because we wanted so much to get my approval of my dad. And I think it drives because he was always like, this is not good enough, this is not good enough. And so we have that. But and while I'm trying to have my kids learn grit and resilience, I'm not going to do it in a way that they're just trying to buy our love or something. And so it's this fine balance of just teaching the right things, breaking generational traumas, because I don't think that just because you had a bad upbringing or your parents were bad or you were a mistake or something, that therefore your life can only be this much. I feel like if there is one human experience story that is better than yours, that had a suckier past, and there are many sucky pasts. I mean, I share so many from the Mind Body program. I learned so many hard stories. Like I didn't know Charlene, no, Charlene Theron, Charlize Theron.
Mhm.
So you know the actress? So she came to America because she really wanted to be an actress, and her dad was an alcoholic, and in self-defense her mom killed her dad in front of him, in front of her. So got a gun and shot her dad in front of her, and amidst all of that came to Hollywood to really become the star she wanted to be. And then she won a Emmy or whatever, a Grammy, or no, not a Grammy, an Oscar.
Yeah.
So it just shows you, like, if most people saw their mom accidentally shoot their dad out of self-defense, how much would people have trauma that they are like, this is the best I can live in my life because you don't understand it. Yet she became one of the most wealthiest, most celebrated actresses. And there's so many stories like that. We all know that Tony Robbins had such a bad past where his mom was like an alcoholic and drugging and was forcing soap in his throat to like, I guess, give him money or share something. And I just think it's these stories where certain people, those stories drive them to become better in their lives. And sure, you could say it's because they have a chip on their shoulder, but still, the fact that they were able to achieve and do more in their lives when they had such hard past, that means I think that anybody can turn their past around and make it so that they have a drive to not be their dad, not be their mom, not be their past, and define their future. And I want my kids to live a better life than us. And when I asked Kevin, what is your goal with us? And his thing is, I just want my kids to be more successful than me.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, like the harder your upbringing is, the harder your childhood is, the cooler your story has the potential to become.
Right.
So leverage that, make it the coolest story possible. So yeah, 100% Judy. I could literally sit here and talk to you about business, entrepreneurship, lifestyle, and parenting all day long. But I do want to be respectful of your time. So where do people go to dive into your coaching, to your group, to your course, to your books? Like where do they get into your ecosystem?
Yeah, so anywhere nutritionwithjudy.com. We have a YouTube channel, a podcast, Nutrition with Judy, and we have a couple books. So we have Carnivore Cure. There's a beginner's carnivore book if you're a beginner and you want a lot more of the tactical in a more simplified version. And then we recommend people doing one-on-one with us once they've tried carnivore. It's not working enough. I just feel like there's so much free content. We even have so much content that's free. So try it first. And then when you're troubleshooting and you can't do it enough on your own, I think that's when you should consider working with us. And then if you've been on the journey for health and wellness for so long, and you feel like deep down the mind body part is a big component that you're not healing, I strongly recommend people to do it. I think even us as internally building it out, it has changed a lot of our lives too. So I think that needs to come after maybe diet and some of the things have been tested and tried. And I think it's always an option as well. But everything is under nutritionwithjudy.com and you can find it there.
Awesome. Well, I will definitely link out, make it easy for people to find you. Judy, you are fighting the good fight. You are truly one of the lights in the world of darkness. So I appreciate all that you're
Yep.
doing, all that you're saying, and all the lives that you're changing. If there's ever anything I can do to help you move the needle forward, you just let me know.
Well, thank you so much, Robert. I feel the exact same way with you. And I'm so grateful we were able to do these podcasts. So thank you.
You bet. You bet. Until next time, Judy, take care.
You too. Bye.